Hello everybody and welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Tournament of Champions DFS Tactics show. Got a lot to get into, a lot of lineups to create, see how we are going to maneuver the price board and all of the chalk that is seemingly out there. So quick reminder that I will be live Friday evening for the Friday Night Chill stream. It is going to be a big focus on weekend golf content. Going to continue that from the fall. It seemed to be pretty popular. I was doing pretty well at it, so hopefully the long break did not cool it off. So we're going to be doing a lot of weekend golf content on Friday evenings, and that'll start this Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. 8 p.m. Eastern. That is the tentative time. I might move it to 9 to make everything consistent throughout the week, but for right now, it'll be 8 p.m. Eastern on Twitch and here on YouTube. But we are here to create as many lineups as we can for the full week contests on the DFS slate for the Tournament of Champions. So let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler and a much better DFS player. Go check them out. It's simply well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media, Twitter and Instagram. I ended up putting a little bit more research out earlier this evening. So if you've not seen that, or if you have not seen the original research that I posted Monday afternoon, make sure to give me a follow at Twitter and Instagram. Posed a couple of questions on Monday, and then some more facts around first-time starters today. So pretty good stuff there. You don't want to miss that, so give me a follow at those links. Twitter is also where I post my betting cards, so I'm going to be doing that after the show this evening. Still have some lineups to input over at DraftKings. This is where I play, but I will definitely be putting my betting card up there and some new wagers that I've seen early on this year for golf in DraftKings. So I'm excited to try those out. I've definitely put a couple of those wagers in, and I will put that out on Twitter after the show tonight. So if you want to see my betting card this week and every week, make sure you give me a follow over at Twitter. And then the link to Twitch is also in the description. This is where I do a lot of the in-depth research in the mornings on Monday and Tuesday. A lot of kind of side content, if you will, gaming, just more relaxed type atmosphere there. So if you want to be a part of that, give me a follow over at Twitch. And then finally for the intro, we are live. Chat is open. Who are you targeting? Who are you fading this week? Are you using any 6Ks? Are you using either of the 10Ks? All of that good stuff. What are you most looking forward to now that the PGA Tour is back? Want to hear from you all. If you have lineup questions, this player, that player, also here for all of that. So let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2023 Tournament of Champions. And we're going to start over at Windfinder to get the most up-to-date information we can on the forecast. And tomorrow looks beautiful. They supposedly got some rain today, but not a lot. And I will refresh this. So supposedly they got a little bit of rain today. Not sure, but tomorrow looks beautiful. High of 75. Very calm by Kapalua standards, by Hawaii standards. Max wind at 12 miles an hour. That's just a beautiful day for golf. And then later on in the week, into the weekend, looks like some wind does start to pick up, but certainly nothing that would classify a major focus of wind. It looks to be a fairly pristine week condition-wise for golf. And that's why I am extra excited or extra curious to see how the course is, how it's playing. We talked about all week how the director of agronomy mentioned that they have had a dry year. So if it is fast and firm, the course is going to play a little bit different than it has in years prior. So I'm curious to see how all of this combines for tournament conditions this week. Weather-wise, wind-wise, looks pristine. Highs in the mid-70s. A little bit of wind maybe Friday afternoon and Saturday, but by Kapalua standards, fairly mild, and very mild tomorrow. So a lot to look forward there. But there is the wind finder forecast. Let's move on over to Fantasy National, and I've got this set for moderate and windy conditions, just in case the wind does pick up a little bit. Give these players a boost in your ratings. Justin Thomas, Sung Jae, Will Zalatoris, Tony Finau, Keegan Bradley, those were the top 5 players in the wind in 2022. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, downgrade these players a little bit if you think the wind is going to play more of a factor than what the forecast indicates. So downgrade Ryan Brim, Chad Ramey, Ches Reavie, Luke List, Adams Vincent, KH Lee, these players here. Not going to spend a whole lot of time looking at wind or anything like that. I don't see much there. It looks to be a perfect week for golf. So with that, let's move on over to the mixed condition model that I have made for the week. And there are a couple of adjustments even from Monday when I talked about it. So let's start with those, or at least start going through the mixed condition model. 10% in strokes gained off the tee when a round is easy. So instead of looking at off the tee in totality, I wanted to see, because this tournament has traditionally been easy, there's really only been one year where multiple rounds were average, and there's never been a difficult round here at Kapalua. I wanted to see who really took advantage of those situations off the tee when it's easy. So 10% when it's easy, 15% strokes gained approach, and you'll see the designation here, all fall. That just means I've gathered all of the fall statistics, whereas all 22 means the calendar year. And it'll be even more obvious when we move to Microsoft Excel. You'll see the tournament timelines and whatnot, but just a quick explanation here. All fall means from the Fortinet to the RSM, and then all 22 means all of the calendar year 2022. But 15% in strokes gained approach. And here's one of the big changes that I have used this week in this year's mixed condition model, even from Monday. We talked a little bit about putting and how these greens are normally Velcro. They might, there's been one round of average, but if the course is indeed dry, that the director of agronomy has been saying, you could see some sped up greens a little bit. The course is definitely going to be faster and firmer. But I still didn't feel comfortable putting fast. These greens are just going to be average if they are sped up. And another interesting thing that I saw in my research yesterday is that the players who putt well here, generally speaking, are pretty good putters on slow greens in general. Not just Bermuda, but Velcro bent, Velcro POA, everything. So this is a little bit of an outlier, if you will, or me taking a dart throw, a little bit of a chance here, going on the specific putters that putt well here in the past 5 or so years. So I put 5% in strokes gained putting on all Velcro and average speed greens in 2022. And I only put it at 5% because it is kind of an outlier. It's a little bit weird since I'm not focusing just on Bermuda. I didn't want to put too much emphasis into this, but 5% in putting on these slower greens is where I have gone with some of the putting. We'll get into the other metric a little bit later. And that'll be an easy part to look at if I am indeed wrong, if Bermuda does happen to matter. But I'll go over that as well later. 20%, the biggest factor in my mixed condition model, showed Monday night how I was wrong last year, and I looked at eagles. I was just incorrect. So I changed it just straight from eagles to birdies or better. But I did add the easy to par filter. Again, we've talked all week how the Tournament of Champions is always easy. So I wanted to see who gets birdies or better when it's easy. Put that at 20%. 5% in strokes gained total par 3 from the fall. 15% in both the par 4s and the par 5s. Yep, that's fine. That's right there. So par 4s and par 5s, both at 15% win in total. And then I thought I was going to do 500 plus. But when I really dug into the specifics of Kapalua yesterday, I noticed that the 500 plus, there was a decent outlier for 1 year, and really it was just a totality of the par 4s, and the majority of the strokes gained for the par 4s came from the 350 to 400. Leaderboard wise, Monday night, it looked like the 500 plus was pretty darn important. But when you dug into the numbers, it was more so just 350 to 400. In fact, the two specific ranges that I've split out here, the specific range of par 5 and the specific range of par 4, each of these make up half of the strokes gained total for their respective hole to par. So par 4s 350 to 400 make up half of the total strokes gained total for par 4, and then 500 to 550 is half of the par 5s here at Kapalua. So 5% in each of those. Would have been nice to put some more percentage in, but again, I just think birdies or better are going to be is the main statistic to look at this week. I don't want to ignore strokes gained approach. I think off the tee, I wanted to see who does well off the tee, particularly when it's easy. So I just kind of ran out of percent, but 5% in each of those. I did want to split them out and see who plays those particularly well. And then the final putting or final metric in the mixed condition model total, and it's a putting metric. We talked about the reputt avoidance. So to keep it consistent with the total strokes gained putting, I just went 3 putt avoidance on Velcro and average. And I am not terribly confident in the filter of this metric. I do think 3 putt avoidance is going to be a key factor, but I did not want to separate out or create an inconsistency between the filters that I'm using for my putting. So this one I'm a little bit I'm just not as confident in the filter, but I did want to see some kind of 3 putt avoidance, so I only have that at 5% as well. So what am I weak to in this mixed condition model? Well, we've talked about it a little bit already. If Bermuda happens to be what I need to look at, I'm kind of going on a bit of a tangent with this Velcro and average versus looking at Bermuda. So that's one way. I don't have any around the green metrics here. It can matter, but I don't see it mattering a whole lot. I just think off the tee is going to be more important. Sorry, as I get the itch out of my eye. If par 3s matter more, if the 500 plus par 5s matter, could be weak to that. But really my biggest weakness, I think is going to be if it's Bermuda putting that matters. And if, say, the par fours matter more, the par fives matter more, something in that realm. And no around the green, that is also a potential weakness. But there is the mixed condition model that I have settled on for this year's Tournament of Champions. So with that, let's go ahead and move on over to Microsoft Excel and the reveal of my rankings. And I believe that's getting cut off. Let's change the focus. There we go. And what's going on here? Oh, that's getting cut off the salaries. Okay. Apologies. So, here are my rankings for the 2023 Tournament of Champions. Jon Rahm is my number one player, and you see that at least analytically he's third, but I am incorporating prior course performance, and Jon Rahm has been very, very good here. So, Jon Rahm is number one. Patrick Cantlay, number two. Brian Harman, number three. Xander Schauffele, Max Homa, Colin Morikawa, Tony Finau, Justin Thomas, Seamus Power, and Scotty Scheffler round out my top 10. Again, the stars seem to be aligning for Sung Jae to get his first win. You mean here at Kapalua? Because he does have a win on the PGA Tour. He's won, I think, 2 or 3. Sung Jae, we'll talk about Sung Jae. There's a lot of people like Sung Jae, but I'm a little bit cautious on him. But I'll talk about that when we get into the price board specifically. But thanks for jumping in chat, Awaken. You were here Friday evening when we were doing the Friday Night Chill stream and talked about how you might not need to go into the 6Ks or whatnot. While that is certainly possible, you're going to be pretty darn chalky if you don't dip your toe into the 6Ks. But when we talk about the rankings here, at least for me, again, Jon Rahm, who's played this event very, very well, really his only poor statistic is all the way over here, the specific length of par fives. But number three in birdies when it's easy. He's played the par fours well this fall. The irons are still there, and putting is actually pretty darn good on these Velcro greens. It's when the greens get sped up that he generally tends to have some trouble. So he's 6th in this field on Velcro and average speed greens. So when you take away Jon Rahm's weakness, that sets him up pretty good. So I think Jon Rahm set up pretty darn well this year. I know that's not really exactly a huge limb to step out on, but I do think this sets up well for Jon Rahm, especially if it is fast and firm. Patrick Cantlay. The interesting thing with Patrick Cantlay is that he is no longer with Titleist, so he's going to be using different gear this year. He's not under contract. He still has Titleist in his bag right now. But throughout the year, things could get interesting with Patrick Cantlay. I don't think that's a reason to completely avoid him this week. But I'm certainly going to be a bit more cautious now that I know he is fumbling with some of the equipment in his bag. Brian Harman, third. Look, the metrics love him. He's played this tournament once. It was a solo third. That's why he has such a low number here. He's been amazing in the fall. He's been the number one strokes gained total player in the fall. I have some reservations, so I would not personally have Brian Harman third. You see the metrics, actually, the analytics have him ninth. My formula has him third because, again, low ownership and the fact that he's played this tournament once and done well. I'm going to go on the narrative that was only one tournament. If he happens to play this year well again, then yes, he enjoys Kapalua. But it was one tournament. He could have had a good week. I'm concerned with Brian Harman's lack of birdies, especially when it's easy. He's more of a bogey avoider than a birdie getter. That's just not going to get it done here. And we'll talk about that with Sung Jae as well. Xander, seemingly Mr. Tournament of Champions along with Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas analytically doesn't seem to line up here. At least the irons aren't good. The par fours haven't been good this fall. But if you're ignoring Justin Thomas here at Kapalua, you're doing something wrong. He loves Kapalua. Tony Finau, the heater he's been on this year. Morikawa has played this event very, very well. He's played this event 3 times, all of them top 10s. So don't sleep on Colin Morikawa. And I've been talking about Seamus Power all week, so it's probably no surprise to see him up here in the top 10. Number 5 in birdies or better when it's easy. Now, the irons in the fall haven't been the best. We did not get his numbers from his win at the Bermuda, so that probably would elevate this number somewhat. But the par 4s have been great this fall. The par 3s were great this fall. There's a lot to like with Seamus Power. He plays easy courses well. He does okay in the wind. I think this sets up pretty well for Seamus. I also don't like how Cantley hasn't played since Shriners. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have taken some time off, but you're not wrong in that sense. There can always be some rust there as well. So good observation there. So with that, we've talked a little bit about the rankings. Let's sort on the price board and get into some of my thoughts for the entirety of the contest. As you can see, no Rory McIlroy decides not to play this year. Not uncommon for him. He does not play this event often. So you have 2 players in the 10K. Scotty Scheffler at 10.3, Jon Rahm at 10 even. I mean, Jon Rahm, number 1 player in my rankings. I'm going to be using Jon Rahm even if he is, the 3rd most projected owned player, maybe the 2nd. I'm still, I don't want to say hesitant on Scotty Scheffler, but the putter does concern me. He's not been good with the putter lately, and his 3-putt avoidance, particularly when it's slow, is not good. So I'm going to wait and see how Scotty Scheffler plays in the first 2 or 3 events coming off the career year before I make my assumption one way or the other, good or bad, about Scotty Scheffler. So I'm just kind of in a holding pattern with him. If you have a strong feeling one way or the other, I would. There are reasons to agree with either side, is how I'll say it. I don't think there's a reason to avoid him, but I don't see a strong reason to back him either. But for me, Jon Rahm, number 1 player. He has loved this course. Seemingly has played well every time he's played it. I do believe there was one event where he was outside the top 10. But he has won this event. He's finished solo 2nd. He's got another top 5 in there. Jon Rahm just plays this course well because he devours par 5s generally. He generally devours par 5s, and that's what you have to do here. Moving into the 9Ks, we have Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, Colin Morikawa, Tony Fitzpatrick, and Matt Fitzpatrick. So the research that I put out on social media earlier this evening was around the first-time starters, and that's why you'll see a lot of the first-time starters are pretty darn low in my rankings. Now, admittedly, I'm probably over-exaggerating the numbers in my calculations. If they haven't played, then I'm giving them, a arbitrary value here so that the calculation will still work. And I'm probably setting that a little bit too high, meaning bad. But the first-time starters here, generally, there have been, I believe, 142 first-time starters at Kapalua since 2012. Going back to 2012, 55% of those first-time starters have finished outside the top half of the field. Now, is that something to write off every single first-time starter? No, of course not. I mean, Jon Rahm solo 2nd when he was his first-time start here at Kapalua. There have been 10 top 5s from first-time starters since 2012. So roughly one a year, top fives. But in general, most of them finish outside the top half of the leaderboard. So that is why I am down on all first-time starters in the rankings. And then I have, I'll use my intuition as who I think is some of the better first-time starters to use. Hoagie seems like good fade in the 6K range since he hasn't played here. Had my eye on Stallings. Yeah, we'll talk about both of those when we get to the 6Ks. Stallings is interesting. It says here that it does not have any course history. He does, but it's back in 2015. And I only collect the previous 5 seasons. He has played here, but it's been a long time ago. But let's talk about the 9Ks here. Justin Thomas, again, what's there to say? Kind of like John Rahm, loves Kapalua. Number 1, birdies are better when it's easy. The irons haven't been great this fall, but if you're ignoring Justin Thomas at Kapalua, you're doing so. You're taking a big chance doing it. Patrick Cantlay, we talked about a little bit, but generally he plays well here also. If you want a reason to fade him, I've given them to you. The equipment, Awaken also mentioned that he has not played since the Shriners, which is a rest versus rust theory type question. Both are legitimate, however you want to think about it. Xander Schauffele, again, loves this tournament. He's played extremely well here. He finished tied for 12th last year, and that was a poor performance by Xander's standards here at Kapalua. Great at the par 4s this fall, particularly great at the short par 4s this fall. So a lot to like with Xander as well. He's going to be really chalky, as you can see. I'm actually fairly high on Colin Morikawa. For as long as this course is, again, I've stressed it all week, it doesn't play to that length because the back 9 plays pretty much all downhill, and the front 9 is where all the shorter holes are, generally speaking. So I don't think the lack of distance hurts Colin Morikawa, and it's shown. He's averaged, I think, a 6th place finish here in 3 tries. Now, he's not the best at going low when it's easy, which is a little bit of a knock on him. But the par 5, he takes advantage of the par 5s. He's 4th in par 5s in this loaded field. The putting, generally his worst metric. He's not great by any means when it's slow, but it's, he's not as bad as Matt Fitzpatrick or a Victor Hovland or a Jordan Spieth, excuse me. So, I like Morikawa for DFS purposes. I think he'll be pretty darn serviceable for you in DFS, especially if he's at 23% when the people around him, Xander, Patrick Cantlay, Justin Thomas, Tony Finau, deservedly so, very, very popular, 28, 26, 27%, but taking Morikawa at 4% less owned, I think is going to give you a pretty big advantage considering how I think he's going to do. Fitzpatrick's never played here, and his fall was not good. It really wasn't. Now, he's much more of a bogey avoider. That's why he plays so well in majors, because he's a bogey avoider, so he doesn't go low. That is not a good recipe for Kapalua. The par 4s this fall have not been good. His irons haven't been good this fall. The putting on Velcro, at least in 2022, was atrocious. So I'm not there with Fitzpatrick. Doesn't seem like the industry or Fantasy National is either. The analytics or the analytic community at Fantasy National doesn't seem to be with Fitzpatrick either. So in the 9Ks, I'm going to play Justin Thomas even if he is chalky. Like Scotty Scheffler, I'm going to be on a holding pattern with Patrick Cantlay. I'll probably throw him in a lineup or two, but I'm going to be using Colin Morikawa. He's the lowest owned. He has shown that he can handle this course. He plays it well against generally the same field or the same strength of field. Finau's fine. He's number 1 in my analytics. He has not played this event well, but there's plenty to like. The the recent wins at the end of the 2022 season. Birdies, irons, par fives. I mean, yeah. Even the putting, when on Velcro and average speed greens, he's mediocre, middling. Yep. Bermuda Burns, yeah, you're not wrong there with Sam Burns. So there's a look at the 9Ks. Let's move to the 8s. You have Will Zalatoris, Cam Young, Tom Kim, Max Homa, Victor Hovland, Sam Burns, Sung Jae, Jordan Spieth, Hideki, and Brian Harman. We talked a little bit about Brian Harman in the reveal of my rankings. I don't think he's third. Again, my formula loves him. He's ninth analytically, but he's played this event only one time, but it was very, very good. That's why he has such a low number here, and he's got a fairly low ownership. I am very, very cautious on Brian Harman. I'm going to avoid Brian Harman. I don't like that he's not a birdie getter, even if the par fours are number one from the fall. And he's also, it's getting cut off, shucks. He's also really bad off the tee, even when it's easy. Which, when you think about it, does make some sense. He is not the longest. So when off the tee is difficult, that's when he shines, because he can find fairways. He just doesn't have the distance to compete with a lot of these other bigger hitters, the Cameron Youngs, the John Rahms, et cetera, et cetera. So he did finish third the 1 year he played here, but I've got some reservations. So if you believe in Brian Harman, you're believing in the fall, and that's fine. I mean, he has had a fantastic fall. I am going to avoid Brian Harman. Awaken has mentioned a couple of other people. At the top, he mentioned Sung Jae. I'm actually going to full fade Sung Jae, and that's a dangerous gamble that I'm taking. Look, you got to choose what you're going to lose to. You can't cover every single base. So I'll lose to Sung Jae. It's a dangerous game that I'm playing this week with that. But I don't like the fact that he's not a birdie getter. He's more of a bogey avoider like Matt Fitzpatrick, Colin Morikawa to a lesser extent. So I'm not excited about that, although he has played this event very well. So, that's analytics versus results. The irons have been pretty suspect this fall, at least in compared to this field. Now, he has been very good at the par fives, and he's number one at the par fives of the length here at Kapalua. So that's a very, very positive sign for Sung Jae, and that's probably why he's been dominating, or at least playing well at this event when the metrics say he probably shouldn't. The putting has not been great on Velcro and average. The irons have been a little suspect in the fall. I'm going to choose to lose to Sung Jae. There's enough else in the 8Ks that I can go to and not have to use 28% projected ownership player like Sung Jae. We talked. Awaken mentioned the player right above him. I'm actually not going to use Sam Burns either, but I like the thought process. He's only 17.5% owned. He has played this event once, so at least he is familiar with the course. Now, the irons this fall have been pretty bad, but as Awaken mentioned, anytime you're on Bermuda, you got to think about Sam Burns, you got to think about Billy Horschel, and you got to think about Sepp Straka. Sam Burns, number one strokes gained putting on Bermuda greens, no matter what speed. Now, it's showing here that he's not been the best. He's not terrible. He's not been the best on Velcro and average. But he's also very good at the short par fours that are prevalent here at Kapalua. And the three-putt avoidance, unfortunately, is getting cut off here, is 12th. So he is not three-putting these slow greens. There's enough to like here. I'm not going there. I'm going in a couple of different directions, but Sam Burns seems like a decent enough play. I am completely out on Will Zalatoris. I do not know where his health is. Yes, he is playing, but he's coming off a rib injury. Like Harris English, like Jason Day, like a lot of these other players that I talk about, just prove to me you're healthy, string together results, and I'll believe again. This is Will Zalatoris' first event this whole season. He did not play any at the fall. So that's another player I'll choose to lose to. If he plays well, okay, I would have nothing to go on That's to back Will Zalatoris. Let's see. Cameron Young, another player that is pretty popular at 20.5%. I don't know if I'm going to go there. Pretty high price as well at 8,800. Look, the off the tee, great. But when it's easy, it's not really all that much of an advantage because he has distance, yes, but other guys have distance too. Where he shines is he's got distance and accuracy. But these fairways are so easy to hit. The off the tee is mitigated in strength a little bit. So a little bit out on Cameron Young. Tom Kim, again, another first-time starter. He's played very well in the fall. The win at the Wyndham, the win at the Shriners. Tom Kim is probably one of the first-time starters I would consider pretty strongly, but understand that he's going to be probably pretty chalky. I don't believe that he'll only be 21.5% owned. I cannot fathom him only being 21.5% owned. So I would tread carefully with Tom Kim, but between these two, I would go with Tom Kim. Let's talk about two players that I really do like and why I'm not using Sung Jae, why I'm not using Sam Burns. Max Homa. I like Max Homa quite a bit. You see here across all of these stats, nothing jumps off the page. 16th, 10th, 15th. Nothing astronomical. You do have a third over here in the par threes, but you also don't have any bad stats. Nothing in red from Max Homa either. He's just solid. The irons, as much as I talked about them being pretty poor leading into the fall portion of the schedule, he played pretty darn well with the irons in the fall. So he's played here before. There's a lot to like with Max Homa, and I'm very, very intrigued at this 14.5%. He'll probably be a little bit more higher owned than that, but I like Max Homa quite a bit this week. I'll back Max Homa in the mid 8K range. And a pretty speculative play on my end. This just feels like a Victor Hovland course. He's played this course twice. He's played it brutally. It's been bad. He's not been good at getting birdies when it's easy. His irons in the fall were poor. This is a gut feeling on my end. This is just a gut feeling. So I'll lose to Sung Jae if he plays well. I'll lose to Victor if he plays poorly. That's what I got for you. Spieth, okay. The irons have been pretty bad. Par fours have been really bad. I'm just not there. Hideki is kind of interesting, but you always have the withdrawal fear. You have the health concerns. He's very good when it's easy. He takes advantage of par fives. I mean, even the putting, he is 7th in 3-putt avoidance when it's Velcro and average. So he is mitigating his worst statistic. You can see he's not even red in putting on slow greens. There's a lot of intrigue here with Hideki. I don't think I am going to be able to stomach the risk, the withdrawal effect, all that stuff. So there's a look at the 8Ks. Let's move to the 7s. We've got Billy Horschel, Corey Connors, Russell Henley, Adam Scott, Keegan Bradley, Aaron Wise, Sahith Theegala, Seamus Power, Sepp Straka, and KH Lee. The two first-timers in the 7Ks are Sahith Theegala and Sepp Straka. So Aaron Wise is actually not a first-timer. Even though he has never won here, he was brought here in 2019, I believe, or maybe 2020. He has played Kapalua once, so he's not a first-timer. But Theegala, I really thought this would set up well for Theegala, and then looking at the metrics, it doesn't. Like off the tee, he is very, very poor, especially when it's easy. Now the 3-putt avoidance he's number 2 in that, behind Aaron Wise, so a lot to like there. fourth in par threes, but boy, the irons are 22nd. Birdies are better, 25th. I don't know. I was probably wrong about Sahith Theegala early on in the week. The metrics don't seem to like him, so I'm probably out. And I'm completely out on Sepp Straka in a lot of things this year, in salary formats, and just, I don't know. I think it was a career year for him last year. Now, if you're going on putting, I mean, he is number 2 on Velcro and average, and he loves Bermuda greens. He's number 5 in 3-putt avoidance when it's Velcro and average. So there's enough there, and he's only at 4.3% owned, but just off of Sepp Straka. So in the 7Ks, players that I would look at, Russell Henley is somebody that's very interesting for me. A lot of it being predicated on the ball striking, and yes, the irons have been bad in the fall, 29th. But we know he's not a bad iron player. He's had a bad run with the irons. This is a great place to get right in that category. Now, the putting is suspect, to put it nicely. So he would have to have a very good putting week. That's the risk you're taking. But I am believing in the ball striking. Off the tee, par 5s, he's good. Birdies are better when it's easy. He's also decent in the wind if it picks up. Russell Henley has been garnering some attention from me. But the biggest 7K play I like is Seamus Power. I'm just all over Seamus Power this week. We've talked about it in the fall when he won at the Bermuda and then went to the Mayakoba and played well. He's the number 1 strokes gained total player in easy rounds. He's number 5 and birdies are better. He's played these par 4s in the fall extremely well. Again, don't be concerned with the irons. The Mayakoba and the Bermuda, we don't get those statistics because there's no shot link. So I would fathom that this number is significantly higher, especially since he won the Bermuda. Now, the off the tee, he can get wayward. That is fair. But these are such wide fairways that even if you are a little wayward, you'll be okay. As long as he's not dead pulling it left or, slicing it as bad as I do, he'll be fine. And it's pretty hard to slice it as bad as I do. Par 3s are fine. I love Seamus Power. He's getting quite a bit of love down here at 18.5%, but I love Seamus Power this week. And then I'm just out on KH Lee. Moving to the 6Ks, I've been focused on 3 of them. And really, those are the only ones I would even consider using. For as much as Tom Hoge is getting a lot of love, I like the play. It makes a lot of sense. His win at Pebble Beach, very similar style. Granted, it's a very short course, but it's coastal. It's easy. Slow greens. Makes a whole lot of sense. He played well there. Number 1 in irons or strokes gained approach in the fall. Number 2 in par 4s. It's a very good combination here. The par 5s need a little bit of improvement, but there's a lot to like with Tom Hoge, especially when you see that the par 5s are 22nd, but he is 5th in the specific range of par 5s here at Kapalua. That gives me more confidence in him, that he's good at the specific range of par 5s. So I like Tom Hoge, but he is very chalky if you're coming down to the 6Ks. I've talked about Adams Vinson all week. I think this sets up pretty well for Adams Vinson around the easy course narrative. He plays easy courses well, as you can see from birdies are better on easy courses. The irons have been good this fall. Take a look at Adams Vinson. And lastly, take a look at Trey Mullinax. Again, around the easy narrative. 15th in birdies are better when it's easy. His irons have been good this fall. And Trey Mullinax is the number 1 player at the specific length of par 5s. And par 5s are so very important here at Kapalua. Take a look at Trey Mullinax at 6,200. Now, granted, he's at 14%. He's kind of popular. But if you're trying to squeeze in a Rahm and a Thomas, or if I'm going to just throw names together like a Thomas, Xander, Cameron Young type lineup, take a look at Trey Mullinax. But everybody else in the 6Ks, I don't want any part of. Mackenzie Hughes, no thanks. JT Poston, no thanks. Scott Stallings has played this event before, but it was all the way back in 2015. He didn't play it particularly well, but he has played it before. So, that he does have that going for him, even though I don't have it listed. But I mean, that's when you've got the most weight in those 3 categories, and he is dead red in all 3 of them. Spawn, no thank you. Reevy, no thank you. List, Brim, Ramey, no thank you, as I hit the wrong button. So that is a look at the price board for me. Let's move on over to making some lineups. We'll start with tiers contests, and then we'll move on over into classic. So I'm actually going to zoom out just a little bit so I can you can see all 6 tiers once my big head gets out of the way. So 4 tiers contests. In Tier 1, you have Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, and Justin Thomas. I think it's between Rahm and Thomas. Pick one. I think both are fine. Me, personally, I would take John Rahm. Justin Thomas is just as good of a pick. I think it's between those 2. Tier 2, you have Patrick Cantlay, Xander, Colin Morikawa, Tony Finau, and Matt Fitzpatrick. I'm probably going to go Colin Morikawa, trying to be a bit unique. The best pick is Xander. He just loves this course. But I'm probably going to take Colin Morikawa and try to be a little bit unique in Tier 2. Tier 3, Will Zalatoris, Cam Young, Tom Kim, Max Homa, and Sam Burns. Kind of the same thought process. Give me Max Homa. I think he's going to be pretty darn unique. I think he's going to be pretty darn serviceable. The high upside pick is Cameron Young. I would stay away from Zalatoris. I would stay away from Sam Burns is fine. I shouldn't say stay away from him. I would stay away from Zalatoris. Cam Young's the high upside play. I imagine Tom Kim's going to be pretty popular. So give me Max Homa. Tier 4, Victor Hovland, Sung Jae, Jordan Spieth, Hideki, Brian Harman, Billy Horschel, and Russell Henley. Again, Sung Jae is the chalky play, probably the best play. And if you think you have enough uniqueness elsewhere, you can probably afford to take Sung Jae here. I like Henley. And I've just got a gut feeling on Victor Hovland. So that's where I'm at in Tier 4. If you want to go with the big fall, Brian Harman's fine. Hey, Joey, how are you doing? Thanks for jumping in chat and tuning in. How have things been? I haven't talked to you in quite a while since before the winter snowstorm or whatever. But hope all things are well. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Hovland. The best pick's Sung Jae in Tier 4. Tier 5, yeah, Corey Connors, Adam Scott, Keegan Bradley, Aaron Wise, Sahith Theegala, Seamus Power, and KH Lee. He's going to be the chalky pick. Well, maybe Aaron Wise might be the chalky pick, but I'm going to take Seamus Power. Just very high on Seamus Power this week. And then Tier 6, KH Lee, JT Poston, Sepp Straka, Mackenzie Hughes, JT Poston, Scott Stallings, Tom Hoagie, Adams Vincent, and JJ Spawn. For me, it's between these 2. Now it's not negative 30. Yeah, tell me about it. That was only the wind chill. Stop trying to exaggerate it. It was negative 5, okay? Let's not get too crazy. For Tier 6, I think it's between Hoagie and Svensson. I just think it's between Hoagie and Svensson. Choose one. I'd probably go Svensson. I don't blame you if you go Hoagie, but no thanks on any of the others in Tier 6. So, that is a look at the tiers lineups. Let's make some classic lineups and see how we're going to maneuver around all of the chalk here at Kapalua. If we're going to try and duplicate these very, very chalky lineups, apologies, let me get everything situated and sorted here. All right. the your fellow contestants are probably going something to the effect of Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay. Well, let me. There we go. Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay, then coming down to Sungjae. In the 7s, looks like Aaron Wise, Seamus Power. Oh shoot, that leaves them 75. They might not even have to do that. Let's boot out Seamus Power. Go Sungjae, who's up here in the low 8s or upper 7. Brian Harmon's getting some love. Brian Harmon, Aaron Wise, and I think this leaves Tom Hoagie. It sure does. So there's a 20, almost a 24%er, which is pretty high. I've made some lineups that have been as high as 25%. Jostle some names around here, maybe JT, Finau. Yeah, actually, let's see if we can't try to find the chalkiest. It's probably JT, Tony Finau. Hoagie is definitely here at the bottom. Probably Aaron Wise. Sungjae's in there. And 86 is Homa. Victor Hovland at 20.4. Shucks. I don't think we're going to be able to get up to the 25. Nope. Well, I tried. But you can kind of see the way your fellow contestants are going. If they're not dropping down into the 6Ks, say if they're not going to Tom Hoagie, and it looks like quite a few are, they're bottoming out at Seamus Power. They're going Aaron Wise, maybe another 7K, but it looks like it's like Brian Harmon, Sungjae, 95, so like Xander Finau, Patrick Cantlay, Cameron Young, Patrick Cantlay, and Tom Kim, 94, or Colin Morikawa even. Like there's a 22.5 that's not dropping into the 6s. Here's the kind of lineups that your fellow contestants are making. To combat that, I have been comfortable going into the 6Ks, and not even just Tom Hoagie. I've mentioned Adam Svensson, who I'm pretty high on this week. I've got a placement wager on him. I like Svensson, and I've been going into Jon Rahm. Now he's not unique by any means, but I am trying to avoid the Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay, Justin Thomas, Xander Schauffele type starts. Going Rahm, and then maybe even going Rahm Thomas or Rahm Morikawa, and then in the 8s, Max Homa and Victor. That's kind of where I've been going with a lot of my lineups. Again, not afraid to drop into the 6s. I would need to drop 100 to put Seamus Power in here, who I'm really high on. So if I go, if I just make this Tony Finau, even though he's more chalky, and use Seamus, that's been a fairly common lineup structure for me. You can see I'm hovering right at 20%. I've been as low as 19, been as high as about maybe 22, depending on certain combinations. Sungjae is going to be pretty darn hard to use in terms of keeping yourself unique. But as Awaken mentioned earlier, like Patrick Cantlay, you have enough reason to avoid him if you want. He's a lot of ownership. He's got the rust versus rest mindset. However you stand on that. So that's a look at where I have been going with a lot of my lineups. Going Rahm and then bottoming out at, say, Svensson, maybe even a Trey Mullinax, Tom Hoagie. But I'm pretty confident that every single one of my lineups will have a 6K. I just do not like enough in the 7Ks to keep myself unique enough to not drop in there. Like, for example, if I go Seamus Power, and to me, I am one of the biggest Aaron Wise supporters there are, but I've got him rated 31st in this tournament. It just doesn't. He just does not rate out well analytically for the Tournament of Champions. The irons this fall have been pretty darn bad. He struggles off the tee when it's easy. So, now he is the number 1 3-putt avoider. That is fair. But I'm going other places in the 7Ks, and they're generally fairly expensive, with the exception of Seamus Power. Like I said, I've been looking at Russell Henley. Corey Connors could be interesting, especially at 11.5%. But really, that's really the only 7Ks that I like. And if those are the only 7Ks I like, it's really hard to be unique in a no-cut event, very small field. It's hard to be unique enough not dropping into the 6Ks. That is quite the introduction, P. There you go. Hola, good sir. Let's see some 2 6K lineups. All right, very interesting. Okay, I can do that. But welcome, P. You won't miss the entirety of it. You just missed 98% of it. So, 2 6Ks. You mentioned that you wanted to fade Tom Hoge, so I can do that for you. Is there any 6K in particular that you're looking at? You mentioned Scott Stallings earlier. I'm not in love with that, but I will use him if you are so inclined. But the key here with the 2 6Ks, you're building quite a bit of uniqueness in that 6K, just in the fact that these players generally aren't going to be used. With the exception of Tom Hoge, he's getting some love. He's getting quite a bit of love for 6K, to be honest. Like Poston, So if you take 2 guys that are sub 10%, or even if you take like an Adams Vincent, who, like I've said, I'm pretty high on, you have your uniqueness and your price savings, so you can go pretty wild. Spawn has consistent form. Okay, so if you are going to use JJ Spawn, and like I said, I'm just very high on Adams Vincent. Actually, he's cheaper than Svensson. So, use whoever this other 6K player is that you like. We'll jump on JJ Spawn here for a second, see what he's got going on. He's only at 8.5%. Now, par 4s this fall have been very, very good. Yeah, he's very good putting on these slower greens. Makes sense. The Valero, his win was on average speed greens, so there's something for you. And he's very good at the specific lengths of par 4s and 5s. I don't hate it. The par 5s kind of scare me, but I don't hate it. So if you're doing this, if you got these 2 players, you've gotten all of these savings here at $9,300 per player. So you got to think, what's the one chalk that you got to have? Is it Justin Thomas? Is it Sung Jae? Is it, you seem to be out on Patrick Cantlay, kind of like I'm reserved on Patrick Cantlay. So, is it Rahm? Is it Thomas? If it is indeed Sung Jae, which is fine, then I would highly suggest that you just go hog wild up here and go Scotty, John Rahm, maybe not both, but you have so much money up here. You can go Scotty, Justin Thomas, you can go Rahm Thomas, you can go Rahm. Your third cheapest could be Colin Morikawa. And look here, you've got Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay, you've got Justin Thomas, Xander, yeah, or Xander. We so know him around here. Again, I'm using some fairly chalky players, and that's still only 21.5%, which is fine. If you choose to come off Sung Jae, if you want to go Sam Burns. You mentioned Sam Burns in the Bermuda putting, which is very valid. The best putter on Bermuda. I mean, you've got half your lineup, and you're not even at 6 or 7% matching a GPP field in a 39-player event. That's unique. that is unique. So now you can do something to the effect of it's a little bit more expensive than Sung Jae, but you could do maybe John Rahm, Colin Morikawa. Shoot, that's still Xander. Jeez. Who did I just have here? Colin. There you go. There's that sub 20 that I was talking about. That's a fairly solid, I would feel pretty darn good with that lineup. Granted, I'm not on Spawn, but I understand it. I'm not using Sam Burns. I understand it. I'm very high on Colin Morikawa. John Rahm's my number 1 rated player, so you know how I feel about that. Xander is seemingly Mr. Tournament of Champions with Justin Thomas. So this is a lineup that I would feel pretty darn good with. And you're using 2 of the more lower end 6Ks, yes. But you're doing that because Svensson, although he is at 12.5%, it's still not, he's not all that common. JJ Spawn, not very common. And you're combining that with Sam Burns, who is really not common for mid-8. So the last one on a double, Henley or Scott, I would go Henley. I've actually been toying around with using Henley in my lineups because I am very focused. I think I've narrowed my player pool down to 13 to even consider, let alone use, just consider. I think I've narrowed it down to about 13, and Henley is one of those 13. So the thing with Henley, one, he has played. So both of these guys have played it once in the past 5 years. Henley played it a little better, but my big belief in Henley, he's not this bad of an iron player. He's not. He's just had a bad fall. You take away, or you put Henley with the form that he's had and just mediocre iron play from Henley, he's going to vault up in these rankings because he's getting hurt by this. Now, yes, the putting is very, very, very poor. But, take a look at versus Adam Scott. Scott, it's not like he's a world beater on these Velcro and average greens. 3 putts. Yes, Henley is terrible. But it's not like Adam Scott's a world beater either. So I really like Russell Henley. He is slightly projected more owned. But Henley is very good at the length of the par 5s. He generally takes advantage of par 5s. Adam Scott doesn't always. So give me Russell Henley of those 2. And I don't think it's particularly close. P, how's the week been? Who are you looking at in terms of wagers or DFS? Not too many of your boys in this one, I don't think. Good questions. To be good in this time. Well, okay, you do have Matt Fitzpatrick. That is one. very, very good, P. Very good. But I think that is going to do it for the DFS Tactics show. Thanks for tuning in and watching the interaction. It's always fun. I love the questions. I love the banter. A reminder, I will be live Friday night for weekend golf showdown content for the Tournament of Champions. Just excited. The PGA's back. Let's get into it. Let's start the new year off right with some wins. Would love to be able to shout out a lot of the members of the community next week. So my betting card will be up on Twitter after the show, finalize some lineups, and then put that up there. But thanks again to everybody tuning in, watching, listening, supporting the channel, liking the videos, subscribing, all that. I really do appreciate it. Put it in the comments, some of the wagers that you have, whether that's in the video or over at social media. What was the lineup that you tended to play? Was it stars and scrubs? Was it balanced? Who were your pivots? Who were your fades? Would love to hear about all of that. So for all of the wagers that you have made this week for the Tournament of Champions, for all of the DFS contests you've entered this week for the Tournament of Champions, and for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.